Welcome back to the Raw Selection Private Equity Podcast. Today we have an absolute cracker for you. Joining us is Jeff Zwiefel, former president and COO of Lifetime and currently strategic advisor for health and fitness industry lined into the private equity industry. This podcast, Jeff shares all about his passion. He absolutely loves his industry. He loves his work. I'm going to talk about his journey of that business from 139 million to 2.3 billion in revenue. Multiple private equity exits, multiple IPOs. Let's dive in. This is Jeff Zwiefel. Jeff, if you can give us a brief insight into you, please.
Yes. Hello, Alex. Nice to be here. I'm Jeff Zwiefel. I'm a former president and COO of Lifetime. We're based in the U.S. with 180 clubs publicly held under the LTH symbol. And I've been with that company for 25 years and I've been in the health and fitness and wellness industry for almost 4 decades now. So a really long and diverse background. My technical training was in exercise physiology and been walked many different walks in this exciting and dynamic and fast evolving and growing industry.
Perfect. Well, I think we're all personally interested in how we can be better, but certainly how the private equity industry is getting involved in that. So looking forward to getting stuck in here. What mistakes have you seen private equity firms or portfolio companies making, and what would you suggest to correct them?
Well, that's a great question. And, I think easy to always play armchair quarterback and look at it as well from an operator side that has partnered and been so very, very fortunate to have just undeniably supportive and great strategic partners that on the private equity side that were, of course, more than just uh, financial partners. They were clearly really critical to the success of our growth of our organization. We grew over my 25 years at Lifetime from 7 clubs to 180 clubs. And, our clubs aren't small clubs. These clubs are 50 to $200 million assets. We grew from 139 million in annualized revenue to now $2.4 billion top line revenue in US dollars. We did about 660 million in adjusted EBITDA this last year. And so to your question around private equity mistakes, I think, the first thing that comes to mind for me is maybe just looking too exclusively at the KPIs and the numbers and the metrics and the financial performance versus, digging deep on the team, the leadership, the culture, and, the inner workings of the organization, because that is obviously going to be so mission critical relative to the long-term success of the company or brand and so I think the people, the purpose, and the performance, I've always believed strongly that, you've got to have a team and leaders. In our business, it's still a people-centric business where, we have about 118 million swipes a year, in our clubs. So every club gets about 100,000 swipes of traffic a month. So it's and every club has almost 300 employees in it, as we call them, team members. So, a company or a brand like ours that's so customer centric, it is all about the people. And if our employees and team aren't engaged and truly passionate and love what they do, and that shows and comes to life every day in the customer experience and the customer journey, then there's no way a private equity team or an organization can achieve the kind of growth and financial objectives that they ultimately are setting out to do. So I think it all starts with people and the purpose and that culture at the core of the business. So that's one of the common mistakes that I think I see over and over again. And I think making sure that the organization is set up for the long-term future, and I know it's attractive for private equity to pursue founder-led organizations because usually they have a phenomenal vision, and they are the driver behind the whole, impetus for the whole organization, but also, is there a really good, well-established succession plan for future leadership, and is the bench strong, for the scalability of the model and for it to truly continue to, flourish and grow? So I think that's super key, from my standpoint. That's what I would say were the 2 key things that I would ask.
So you referenced there people and having the right people. Obviously, I run an executive search firm, so I'm an advocate for getting the right people in the right seats. But if that was easy, then I wouldn't run an executive search firm. I'd have to do something else.
Yeah.
What, from your perspective, should private equity be looking at when they're assessing these businesses in health, specifically health, fitness, etc., that means that they should have the right people and what that's going to look like? I know that's not an easy question,
Yeah.
but if I
Yeah.
rephrase that and say, what are the things that you've looked at when you've done acquisitions or when you've looked at certain your clubs and the performance and kind of building that full picture? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a very good point, and like we were just referencing, it's easy to say and it's really hard to do, right? And if it was easy to do, everybody would replicate it. And investors have asked us over and over again, as you can appreciate, what's the one or two things or three things that you're doing that have made you guys so successful? And I say that same response to that, Alex, which is if it's one or two or three things, again, any monkey would do it, but it is the complexity of 100 things that we have to bring to life every day that also creates what we refer to as this high barrier to entry in a low barrier to entry category, i.e., the health club space, if you will, the gym space. Because who doesn't wake up tomorrow and really enjoy and love working out and feel great about it and think, well, I'm going to start a club, right? I'm going to open a studio or a boutique. And so this maniacal commitment to the best people, we have three pillars of this: best place and best programs. And for us, the best people, right, is this idea starting, Alex, with casting. Like a Broadway musical, like Disney, we don't hire, we cast. So we're looking at the type of personality the individual has for a front desk role. Are they outgoing? Are they an extrovert? Are they engaging? Are they friendly and inviting? Right? Or are they reserved and they don't like to engage with people all day long? Well, if you've casted that type of person for the front desk, you've made a horrific mistake, right? We built many years ago, 20 years ago, the foundation internally called a lifetime university. That is our training and development arm of the company internally that said that any of our employees or team members, Alex, we had to know that they know first. Sounds simple, right? But to hold anybody accountable to a standard, right? And I think great companies have high standards, yes, in terms of their expectations of their customer experience. Well, that starts with ensuring that your employees know that standard inside and out and what each of their roles are in delivering that requirement. So we invest heavily in those team members with that training and certification so that that consistency of the execution is the same in our hometown of Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Manhattan, in New York, or Scottsdale, Arizona, you know, or Dallas, Texas. And so when you come in a lifetime, that experience is always exceptional. It's extraordinary because of that, not ordinary. And that is what people understand, and we train them like Navy SEALs. It's intentionally extremely difficult to pass. Our general managers who run our clubs run little cities, right? There's 30,000 memberships in that club, 300 team members. It's complex. And so they're running somewhere between 18 and $25 million of revenue per year, somewhere between 9 to 13, 15 million of EBITDA annualized. And so if they're a bad seed or a bad egg, all of it goes wrong. So we bring those GMs in for 9 days of intensive training into Minneapolis and put them through rigorous work. And then they have to sit in front of a panel in front of the executives like America's Got Talent and talk about how they're going to deliver their club to this artistry level of expectation. We put together something we call Artistry, which is our annual award of the club that achieves not only the financial KPIs, but the intangible customer experience expectations of being over the top, right? And so that they receive this trip and this award and this recognition, and they get stock in the company, and it becomes a really big deal. And they get cash so they can go back and throw a big party for all their employees and celebrate that. But as you know, Alex, and any great operator will know, there's nothing worse than being on a basketball or a football team when the coach or the general manager allows that subpar performance to go on. At the same time, by contrast, when you put that exceptional athlete on the field, it raises the stakes for everybody in the game, right? The Michael Jordan on the court, everybody's game elevates. So, we teach aggressively. You're defined by your weakest link in the chain, by the lowest standard that you accept in your operation defines you. And so, we have many, many red, yellow, green KPI spreadsheets, and we believe in a culture of high performance. And I've always been one of advocating for the folks that are the rabbits. They're going to go and figure out how to create that exceptional performance. And all we need to do many times is listen and learn from them and determine how we're going to continue to replicate that playbook that they've created. Most of the ideas aren't coming in HQ, right? They're not coming at the central headquarters in the command and control old style. Most of them are coming and being formulated in the front line with the team members and employees that are working with our members each day and figuring out how to solve those kinds of problems, adapt, and create a better mousetrap every day.
So let's dive into that because I think there's some really interesting points there. And I think what you've shared with regards to the process around general managers, I think every business, and certainly speaking from search, every recruitment search business, whatever title we want to put on ourselves, all talks about exceptional service, all talks about X, Y, and Z. Every restaurant, every retail outlet would love to have really engaged employees. You walk in, the Walmart experience, the greets is there, high energy, everyone's super helpful. They see somebody looking, reaching for something, but in general perpetuity, most things are pretty crap. So how? So you've put your GMs through a particular training. So you're starting with those P&L leaders, the chieftains on the ground, the mini chief execs, presidents, whatever you want to call them. You mentioned about taking them through that training process. I'm interested to see, is that training process also an assessment process for you? Is there a fallout rate from that? And then secondly, talk to us a little bit about the process, because I think we could all learn from creating those, raising those standards, taking that deep breath and going, "Do you know what? I'm prepared to make a mistake. This person's not right. We're not going to put them at level, but please share us how you built that, what the process was, and more about it."
Yeah. Um, the fallout rate for that particular process and that rigor that we put them through within our lifetime university and the GM certification criteria is rigorous, intentionally so, right? And only a few candidates are even accepted annually in the process. And so we've got a really powerful and aggressive pipeline, as you can appreciate, of promoting from within because they have such a good foundational knowledge and firsthand appreciation for the standards and the cultural expectations and the norms that we require to operate at. The health club space, Alex, is a really crowded, fragmented industry, and I know it is in the UK as well. I'm familiar with David Lloyd, and I've been into the third spaces last time I was there. And of course, I evaluate and operate and think about all the little things in the crossover from, what I've been doing for over 25 years now in the industry. And, it's really tremendously interesting, right? Because, you know, the the consumer has a certain expectation. I don't care if you're a high volume, low price provider like a Planet Fitness or a Crunch Fitness in the US, that is a $9.99 a month. Foundationally, the customer's expectation is that it's clean, that it's functional, as we would refer to it as, meaning that the equipment all works, right? And it does what it says it's gonna do. The showers work. If most of them don't have towels, most of them have pay lockers, those kinds of things. Those were all embedded into our monthly service, right? When we started the business 30 years ago and we offered free towels, free lockers, free childcare, no contracts, people said that our founder would be out of business within 6 months. Over 30 plus years later, we've been public twice and we have an enterprise value of, I don't know, $7 billion right now. And it's been extremely successful. We still do no contracts, by the way. We still do free towels. And we still have an amazing product at amazing value. But I believe the fundamental thing that continued to go back to is this ordinary to extraordinary. Our idea is anybody can be ordinary, and it's so easy now in today's world, as you're represented in hospitality, to be extraordinary. The little, the low expectation, the low bar that I think certainly in the US that consumers have come to sadly expect and become accepting of because it seems so difficult to get high quality labor. Sure, it's about pay. Sure, it's about compensation and benefits. You've got to be competitive on those things. But one of the things that I would argue to Alex that attracted and retained the highest quality team members in our business is that we invest in them relentlessly. That philosophy of our university has been one in which that we want to invest in you in a way so heavily that you would become more valuable at lifetime, or more valuable if you decide to move on and do something somewhere else. And that pays back for us as an employer tenfold because they know that we care about them and we're investing in them and our objectives to make them better. We've created a team member dashboard, for example, that every employee fills out. And that dashboard's pretty simple. And I believe one of the most important things, it shows your title, who you report to, who reports to you, what your core objectives are and your deliverables, and how they're measured. But most importantly, on the lower right-hand part of that dashboard, it shows what your next 3 to 5 year growth objectives are. Where do you want to be? And as a manager or a leader, I'll say, because I'm not a big advocate of managers, it conveys all kinds of negative connotations, right? Versus a leader. And that's why we call our GMs, uh, lead generals, not GMs anymore, general managers. But that coaching and discussion about what do I have to do to get to that next career point that I want to be at and make more money and have another title. And investing in those team members like that makes them also give back to you because it's a give and take, right? It can't be as an employer, I pay you, so I deserve X. It's also, Alex, a culture that starts at the top. For me, as the COO and president of the company, I would never ask somebody to do something that I didn't do myself first. And that included things like picking up garbage in the parking lot, folding towels, sweeping lockers. I would bring our corporate leadership team into a club, Alex, as an example, and we do deep cleaning for 2 or 3 days. And on our hands and knees, scrubbing the tile, scrubbing the lockers, and an organization, I believe, that's founded on that premise that sees and understands that its higher ups, the ivory towers, are willing and able to do those kinds of things goes a very long way in terms of extending brand loyalty back. And so I think that's extremely important. I did performance reviews on 100 general managers in person one year where I flew to every one of those 100 clubs and sat down with those general managers. I personally, as a COO and president, hired every GM replacement, interviewed every one of them in our clubs across the 180 of them because it's that important that I know who's running that ship and that person can be entrusted with the keys. And as you spread the brand across the big market like the US, it can easily get washed out and diluted. And we know how horribly dangerous that can be because we've all gone in to a Starbucks or you name it, right? And we've seen the brand dilution that happens relative to the expectations of Schultz and the standards that were set initially.
The general managers that you interviewed, what were the traits that you look for? What was the things that you knew, hey, this person's going to make it, and they clearly, they obviously made it.
Yeah, great question, because that is part of that casting criteria. Absolutely, it's the core part. So grit, I would say, is one of them. Passion is another. Resilience, adaptability, because we are a change company. The health and fitness and wellness industry is always going to go through rapid reinvention. Otherwise, you'll die. So as an operator, for you to know that constant understanding of one thing that's going to hold true, and that is change. And that evolution has to be quick. The the ability to have a vision. Uh, and again, I evaluated not what they think, but how they think. So we would have those lead generals create a very detailed strategic plan as part of the interviewing process that laid out their 30, 60, 90, 100-day plan. And that how they were able to articulate their thoughts and their vision and strategy and connect the dots is extremely important to us. But, are they a good communicator? They've got to lead 300 team members. Would I be inspired by this individual? I would say to myself, if I was listening to them try to articulate the lifetime mission, the lifetime vision, and the operating objectives. Would I be excited and would I want to follow that person, right? That can I create followership as a leader is fundamental. So we've developed, Alex, 10, I think it's not 8 leadership principles. Let me talk about them. Communication is one. Passion is another. Vision is another. Love is another. Integrity, courage, communication, and benevolence. Those are the 8. So all of us will vary, we're humans, on how much we have attributes leaning toward or against those things. But those are our core leadership values that we want our leaders to withhold. So we will look at how they deliver against those 8 leadership attributes in the casting process and in the performance reviews. And, I believe in a base plus bonus performance pay environment to motivate, which should be a 50-50 odds of winning, I believe, along with stock and equity that's real in our company. Because when they feel they have a position of ownership, they think like owners. They act like owners. They do the things that they need to do when no one's watching, right? Which is the key attribute that we're looking for. It isn't just, oh, let's tidy up and spiff the club up when they know an audit's going on, when corporate HQ's coming in. Because I hear that too, right? And what do I ask the members when I walk through the club? Do you know your lead general? Because I'm trying to understand, are they acting as the mayor of the club, or are they sitting in their damn office all day doing admin work, right? Because the most important attribute, are they engaged and listening and understanding, connecting with the member as well as our employees and team member? One of our most highly regarded general managers that runs one of the most successful clubs here in the Minneapolis market, in the Edina Club, that we also have at Lifetime. We do shared work called Lifetime Work that's adjacent to many of our clubs. We also do a Lifetime Living, which is our apartment buildings where people can, play, stay, and work. And so we have an operation like that in our Henderson location in Las Vegas. But this lead general in the Edina Club, there's not a day when because I have a Lifetime shared workspace there as well. So I walked over to the club yesterday to get some food at our Life Cafe because we have amazing food as well, shake smoothies, grab and go. And there's not a day that vacuum is not on this guy's back, and he's out vacuuming and engaging with the membership because that's just what he's great at, and he loves it. And it's just a tribute to how he leads.
You mentioned quite a few of those soft skills there. Now, we all everybody I know, it's like every search that we take on always says we want self-motivated, driven, hardworking, people in the weeds, hands-on, all of these buzzwords that come out. And then when I go, okay, how do you measure that? Well, we just know. It's usually the answer, which means you don't know. Um, so how let's just choose, it doesn't matter which one, but
Yeah.
what was your method for, because you're probably gonna have two different methods. One was, what was your method for on interview selection of these people of when you're trying to find, and nothing's ever 100%. And then secondly, how did you measure people within your business for the soft skills that you said, which are, hey, this guy thinks he's an 8, this guy thinks he's a 7.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. So the interviewing casting process, as we've been discussing, is rigorous. I've debated through the years, is it too many steps? Are we making it too difficult? Are we getting washed out, right? Because of, but I really believe that if, you know, our folks want those kinds of roles, uh, then they'll persevere through the process. So there's probably, you know, there's plenty collaborative interviews in the process, but probably 4 to 5 steps of interviewing for a lead general. First off, we've also developed in the company, I'll back up a little bit, a scouting division. So this scouting division is different than a classical recruiting because they're looking largely for performers. And sometimes those performers are in Group X, they might be in Pilates, they might be in cycle, they might be in personal training, but they're also looking for those lead general performers. They're all performers in a way, if you get what I mean. Um, so in the process, I think there's art and science, as you're speaking to, Alex, as I would encapsulate it, right? In all things in life. If you're a big picture thinker, a CEO mind, where you use your left and your right brain, right? Your analytical brain and your creative, emotional part of your brain. And, you find, like you were mentioning, which part of that brain are you looking for, given the type of role that it is? Someone in our spas, our life spas, that or in yoga or in Pilates, that probably gonna be more on the emotion and creative side because that's where their juices are best flowing. A lead general needs to have a really strong balance in that art and science because they have to really have the emotion and care of how to deal with team members and members' real issues. Sometimes tragically, an accident or a death in a club, which is horrific, but we've had them over the 30 years. But other times, sitting in front of private equity and board members, going through, KPIs and board presentations and complex decks of debt to EBITDA ratios and things like that, and EBITDA multiples. But so that rigor, I believe, is I'm gonna take them out for dinner or lunch, as part of that interviewing process. I'm gonna also ideally work out with them in one of our clubs, and here's the intangibles that I'm gonna look for. How did they treat the waiter or the waitress? How do they treat the guest, you know, at the table as well as you as the interviewer? Do they pick up their weights after each set? Do they engage with other employees or members while we're in the gym? Because these are the attributes that I'm gonna ask for when they're in that role. And these are great demonstrations of those and indicators. Do they close the locker door? Do they pick up the towels right in the locker without being asked for? These are things that I evaluate on whether they see the things that we'll expect. Because what I look for in a leader is the intangible is also, like Jack Welch said from GE, the former CEO of GE, can somebody see around the corner? Can they begin to predict what's going to happen before it happens? So, yes, we have them put together that deck, how they will prepare their club for artistry. That's a lot of the science. That's going to be key business metrics and performance requirements. But the art becomes ultimately, how do we judge them on that? One of the things I look for most is what the turnover of their employees is. The second thing that I look for is how many of their team members are getting promoted and succeeding into future other promotions outside of their club. One of the things that I wanted to do for stock uh, equity awards was the GM that promotes the most people out of their club to future department managers or GM roles was the person that should be granted the most stock because they're fueling our growth, right? They're building our succession plan and our bench for the future. So, as you can tell, Alex, I'm very excited about this topic because I think in business like ours, a hospitality business like, hotels and restaurants, it's everything. It's foundational. And if you don't have that, and why I said that as a private equity group, if they're not looking and going in and auditing and inspecting that experience deeply and talking to employees on the front line, then they're missing a key part of what the ingredient is that makes that company now and into the future. Because that's where you're going to hear the real shit, and, the real stuff's going to come out, right? How does this company treat you? And how do you like it here? Right? Because I believe in that 1994 Harvard Business Review service profit chain that started with a happy and engaged team member that translated to a satisfied customer that translated ultimately down to great sustained financial results and outcomes.
Makes sense. So What is your biggest learning point, your single biggest lesson that you wish that you knew at 139 million that you did know at 2.3 billion?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, for me in our business, clearly I would have liked to have known that COVID was coming, because I would have done all kinds of things to, prepare for that, right? From creating a more rapid omni-channel, digitalized, personalized experience. I think for me, we would have gone harder at the, um, making sure that physical our digital experience was at or better than our physical experience. Our in-club experience, I would say, is exceptional, and it's best in class, best in breed, best in the US.
Okay.
But we have lagged behind in creating the digital experience for our customers to make it seamless, frictionless, and elegant. And that was because, we didn't allocate and have the right leadership in the vertical that oversaw that area for, about a decade. And it hurt us. We fell dramatically behind. The wake up call was COVID, and we had to pivot and change paths and stand up everything overnight. So it was a blessing, of course, and a curse. But it brought out so many different things that we didn't think possible, right? I think another thing for me was that, we didn't have to stay focused on a price point that was so restrictive for us. We could have unlocked amazing pricing much earlier in our model, and our experience that we were delivering was allowing for that. For me, we were spending 26-28 million a year on sales commission to our salespeople. We cut it all out in COVID. It was an opportunity to reset. They were glorified Disney tour guides. The club sold itself. It's a 100,000 to 150,000 square feet luxury, resort. And they were glorified tour agents getting a commission and fighting over those commissions. We cut all that out. We merged two divisions and they became concierge people there to service our customer. And most of our new leads came in through our web leads and they were joining online anyway, right? 70 some percent were either assisted or joining through our online portal. So, you know, we didn't need that facilitation of those sales commission people anymore. I wish we would have done that much sooner, right? Hindsight 2020. Um, so that's those are some of the best learnings, I would say.
What do you foresee for the health and fitness space, both in general and obviously with a private equity lens?
Yeah, well, I think it's prime for growth. I mean, in the US, Alex, there were these recent transactions that happened. One through our current private equity group, Leonard Green and TPG. Um, TPG sold Crunch Fitness to Leonard Green for $2.5 billion here several weeks ago. Just an amazing transaction to the tune of, I don't know, somewhere in 13 to 16 times EBITDA multiple, just amazing. And followed on the heels with EOS Fitness that TSG just did at another $2.5 billion transaction, probably somewhere between around 13 times EBITDA multiple. So my point in all this, we're establishing new benchmarks relative to the valuations of folk players in the industry. And those are the high volume, low price segment, the $9.99 offerings. The luxury and the premium segment, I think, have breakout potential relative to the valuations. I don't think as much of private equity understands the power of the health club's predictable and re and very deliberate revenue streams of the subscription business, and it's extremely powerful and very predictable. And so I think it will continue to attract because, the data shows that, 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65 by the age of 30. So fitness and wellness and looking good and feeling good is the new status symbol in the US. It's not about a watch or a car or a house. It's about looking good, feeling good, and performing good. So the growth and convergence of this wellness, fitness, recovery, precision medicine, and longevity category is fascinating and going through this very rapid growth. We have the dimension of GLP-1s. I've started a new business at Lifetime called Miura Performance and Longevity that is uh, medically driven blood biomarkers of 100 biomarkers that we collect on you. And then we develop a very specific and personalized health program for you, ranging from uh, nutritional supplementations to lifestyle modifications to peptides to hormones. We do GLP-1s as well where appropriate, but we're doing it through the medically prescribed through your GP. We have our own GP on site inside of our clubs where we're also doing red light therapy, cold plunges, uh, hyperbaric chambers, relaxation beds, and we're offering that IV therapies all within a lifetime. So with a subscription of about $139 a month that you can stack on top of your club membership, you'll pay $400 or $500 for that extensive blood panel. You'll get an hour consultation, and then we'll retest that blood biomarkers every 3 to 6 months to see if you're moving those key blood biomarkers and that you're improving your overall health. We know that right now, 80% of our health is dictated by our lifestyle, not by genes and age. And that 93% of Americans have dysfunctional sort of blood biochemistry right now. They have inflammation, they're obese, they're on early stages of dementia, you know, and so we want to catch that stuff early on. So we're doing that right now, and we're bringing it to the consumers at a great price.
There, interesting. So the looking at that, because I think, this is a private equity podcast, we focus on private equity, but I want to go into that world a little bit. There's lots of biohacks, there's lots of health hacks, there's all these different things that are coming out. Some of them I'm sure are genuine, some of them I'm sure are absolute crap. I'm in no position to share that, but you may be. We've got thousands of people listening, a lot of them sit in chairs all day, the executives, the private equity investors. What are some of the things that maybe are a bit harder to deal with, whether it be lifting weights or whatever as we move? What are some of the things that you think, look, you should be taking this supplement? It's not health advice, it's not this, it's just your experience of things that you should tell us that we should all be doing.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, there's 4 components of it, right? The mind, the exercise, nutrition, and then next generation medicine. Those are the 4 pillars we focus on, but you gotta move, right? You gotta stay active. There's no more powerful longevity drug than exercise. It truly is exercise is medicine. The data is so now clear. The anti-aging drug of resistance training. So how does an operator, and it was a no-brainer for Lifetime to put it together because we have the customers. We have 1.5 million members. We have almost 2 million digital members now. I surveyed 400,000 of them. They're already engaging in all of these kinds of services today. So they got to move. Strength training is the most important thing you can do to preserve muscle mass and maintain a quality of life, not just to look good, but all the other biochemical benefits it have. You've got to do some sort of zone 2 training. You've got to address the good sound nutrition, and you've got to address sleep, of course. But having sauna sessions, there's no denying the benefit of a sauna, whether that be infrared or regular sauna. you know Things like red light therapy for skin health is tremendously beneficial. um, Cold plunges on days that you aren't doing resistance training are tremendously valuable, as well, physiologically. But then when you think about supplements, our business is right now about a $30 million ancillary revenue stream for us. We want to make that a $1 billion enterprise in and of itself, and we think it can. To your point, it's got to be trusted, it's got to be independent tested, it's got to be high quality. But for the normal person, taking a vitamin D, if you're not getting regular sunlight, taking omega-3 fatty acid, absolutely mission critical for cardiovascular health, for brain health. Taking a magnesium, where most of us are deficient on mag. As you age, a vitamin B12, highly important and engaged. And then you just got to think about the other things and ideally talk to a medical professional or get your blood work done, and don't just blindly chase after these magic, quick fix approaches, because they're, as you say, Alex, they're all over the place. And it's difficult for the consumer that now, ideally, great thing, they want to take control of their own health, but they've got to find a trusted, respected source for it. And so that's the opportunity for private equity right now, is to stand out and figure out a model that how you bring all these different things together in a scalable model that does two things, in my opinion. One, it delivers an exceptional customer experience. Customer journey is flawless. And two, it delivers on unit level economics that, are really compelling, in terms of a top line revenue and, EBITDA performance that makes all kinds of sense. So a lot of people doing it in the States. They're all over the place. They're chasing a lot of different things, but packaging this stuff in a unique way is going to be really a gold mine. And there is right now a gold rush chasing it right now.
Very interesting, and thank you for giving us those insights and sharing them. If somebody wishes to reach out to you, Jeff, how best do they get in touch, please?
Yeah, they can get with me with jzwiefel.com. They can search me and check that out. They can connect with me on LinkedIn as well if they'd like to. I'm fairly active there, and love to hear from people, and really appreciate the time being with you today, Alex, and the discussion that we've had. I am obviously very passionate about these topics, and I spent a lot of time mastering my craft, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, we absolutely love people who love what they do. You've used the word passion a lot, and that is definitely something you are absolutely full of. So, thank you very much for coming along, sharing all the health advice, but more so sharing the business journey and lessons that we can all learn from that. So, thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you very much for all of our listeners for yet again tuning into the Private Equity Podcast. Till the next time, keep smashing it, and thank you very much for listening.